My name is Grace Taylor. I'm 27, fiercely loyal, and painfully aware of how quickly life can twist everything we think we know. I was 8 when I lost both my parents in a car accident. My grandmother, without a second thought, took me in. She gave up her own routines, her own comfort, everything, to raise me as her own. Mom, dad, best friend, confidant. She was all of it. 6 months ago, the doctor's words hit like a hammer. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Maybe 3 months, they said. But my grandmother, stubborn as ever, clung to life. She made it 6, defying every expectation. When the diagnosis came, I packed up my things from the apartment Nicholas and I shared and moved back into my childhood room. The walls still smelled faintly of her cooking, of lavender, of the comfort I'd known for years. I took leave from work. Every day I watched her weaken, every breath a fragile victory. Nicholas wasn't happy, not in the way I needed. "You're just leaving me," he said when I told him I was moving. His apartment, our life, our routines, all upended. "She's dying. I need to be there," I said softly, trying to make him understand. "What about us? Our life?" His words were sharp, tinged with frustration. "This is temporary, a few months at most." I remember staring at him, his expression unreadable. "She's lived her life already. You need to think about your future, our future." I should have seen the red flags, the subtle dismissal of my priorities, but I was too absorbed in her care to process it. I told myself it would be temporary, that Nicholas would understand. Weekends passed. Nicholas visited twice, maybe 3 times, each time bringing excuses. Work, friends, not feeling well. I didn't push him. My focus was her, not the tension simmering in our apartment. It was during this time my aunt would sometimes stop by, sitting quietly in the living room, offering tea or a sympathetic nod. Her presence was comforting, though I could sense her careful glances when Nicholas came around. Something in the way she watched him, the way she'd purse her lips, made my stomach tighten. I didn't understand it yet, not fully. 3 weeks before my grandmother passed, I had to run to the pharmacy for her pain medication. My aunt stayed behind to keep her company. Half an hour later, I returned to find my aunt standing outside the house, her face flushed, her hands gripping the car door like she was holding herself together by sheer force. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at me, blinking rapidly, as if she was recalibrating. "Yeah, fine. I should head out," she said, climbing into her car and speeding away before I could probe further. I didn't think much of it then. Emotions were raw. Everyone was exhausted. My focus returned to her bedroom, to the frail figure in the bed who had carried me through life. In those days, each moment felt both fragile and infinite. I slept in the old room, cooking her favorite foods, keeping her surroundings calm. My world shrank to her presence, her shallow breaths, her weak smiles, the fleeting warmth of her hand in mine. Nicholas's absence was a dull ache, but one I pushed aside. I kept telling myself, it's only a few months. She's the reason I am who I am. I can't abandon her now. And yet Nicholas's words, the ones I brushed off as frustration, began echoing in my mind. I didn't know then just how dark those echoes would grow. Evenings were quiet except for the beeping of monitors and the occasional whisper of my grandmother. Sometimes I'd catch my aunt's eyes from across the room, hesitant, unsettled, a secret she held back for reasons I didn't yet know. Something hung between them, something I would only discover later. As I sat by the window, listening to the rain patter against the roof, I felt the weight of impending loss and a creeping tension I couldn't yet name. I had returned home to care for her, but in doing so, I had stepped into a delicate web of loyalty, devotion, and, I would soon realize, betrayal. 3 weeks before my grandmother passed, I stepped out to refill her pain medication, the chill of the autumn air biting at my cheeks. I left my aunt in the living room, sitting quietly by her side, offering company and comfort. Nothing out of the ordinary, or so I thought. When I returned, my stomach sank before I even reached the door. My aunt's car was still in the driveway, but she wasn't inside. Instead, she stood outside, fists clenching and unclenching at her sides, her eyes red, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You okay?" I asked cautiously. She shook her head quickly, almost imperceptibly. "Yeah, fine. I should go," she said. She didn't meet my gaze. She climbed into her car and sped away before I could ask another question. The unease that had been simmering in my chest tightened. I pushed it aside, focusing on my grandmother. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The scent of chamomile lingered in the room, her favorite blanket draped across her frail shoulders. I pulled a chair close and held her hand, willing her to feel my presence, willing myself to feel nothing else. Later, long after the sun had set, the memory of my aunt's expression gnawed at me. Something had happened in that half hour, something she had witnessed, but I didn't know what. The truth hit me, painfully, during the funeral, but the seeds were planted that evening. Nicholas had arrived while I was gone. He had come into the house under the guise of checking in, but his intentions were darker than any words I had imagined. He leaned close to my grandmother, speaking softly, a whisper meant only for her ears. "You're wasting her life," he said. "You should just let go. Don't be selfish by holding her back." I wasn't there, but I can see it now, in the way my aunt described it later. The way her eyes had widened in shock, the way her jaw clenched so tightly I thought her teeth might crack. My grandmother, fragile and exhausted, could only cry. She didn't speak. She couldn't fight him. All she could do was clutch the thin blanket around her shoulders, her tears silent, trembling. When Nicholas left, he walked out as if nothing had happened. My aunt stayed, holding my grandmother's hand, her own shaking. "I couldn't tell you then," she admitted during the funeral, her voice barely above a whisper. "She didn't want to burden you. She asked me to promise I wouldn't tell." But now, after her passing, the truth could no longer stay hidden. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me as I listened, numb. My grandmother had died in my arms 2 weeks later, the hospice nurse whispering words of comfort I barely heard. Nicholas hadn't visited again. He had no excuse, no apology, just a manipulation that left me staggering under grief I wasn't ready to process, betrayal I couldn't yet name. I remembered the small, quiet moments in the days before she died. Her weak smile when I cooked her favorite stew, the way she whispered my name when she thought I wasn't listening. And I realized something bitter and sharp. Nicholas had tried to turn her final days into a weapon against me, to fracture my loyalty, to make me choose him over her. The room, once warm with the smell of chamomile and old wood, now felt heavy. Shadows clung to the corners. The betrayal wasn't immediate, wasn't visible, but it was there, lurking in the silence left behind. Even now I can feel it, a gnawing ache behind my ribs. He whispered words into the ears of someone who could no longer defend herself, words meant to manipulate me, to guilt me, to control me. And I wasn't just angry, I was haunted, not just by his betrayal, but by the fact that my grandmother had died, never speaking her pain aloud, and I had been none the wiser. The next days were a blur. I moved between caring for her, emptying drawers, and moments of quiet grief. Nicholas's absence, for once, felt like a relief, though I knew it wouldn't last. I had no idea how the storm he had unleashed was just beginning. The funeral was small, intimate, maybe 50 people, family, neighbors, friends from my grandmother's church. Everyone moved in hushed tones, carrying flowers and memories, their words soft, almost fragile against the weight of absence. I was numb, moving on autopilot. Condolences came and went, hands shook, shoulders patted. I barely heard them. My heart was still clinging to the warmth of her hand, to the sound of her whispered reassurances in the bedroom just days before. And then my aunt pulled me aside in the kitchen. Her voice trembled as she spoke, hesitant, burdened. "Grace, I need to tell you something about what happened 3 weeks ago, while you were at the pharmacy," she said, glancing around the room as if the walls themselves might listen. My stomach dropped. "What is it?" She swallowed, eyes welling with tears. "Nicholas, he came. While I was sitting with your grandmother, he asked to speak with her privately, and I stepped out, just down the hall, to give them space. But I overheard everything." I froze. The air itself seemed to thicken. "What happened?" I whispered. She looked away, then back, jaw tight. "He told her that she was wasting your life, that she was being selfish by holding on, that she should let go because you had a future to build, and she was in the way." The words hit me like a physical blow. My grandmother, frail and tired, had only been able to cry in response. Nicholas had used her last days as a tool, a way to manipulate me. "You told me this morning?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Yes, she didn't want you to know then. But now, after she's gone, you needed to know." My chest tightened. Every heartbeat felt loud. Anger, grief, disbelief, emotions tangled into a rope that threatened to strangle me. And then I saw him, Nicholas, dressed in black, but styled as though for a cocktail party rather than a funeral. He strode into the reception with that same confidence, oblivious to the quiet horror radiating from the room. "You need to leave," my uncle said, stepping in front of him. "I'm here for Grace," Nicholas said loudly, enough for everyone to hear. "She needs support. Her grandmother just died. She needs me." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. He had abandoned her when she was alive, when I needed him, and now he paraded in as the savior of my grief. "Leave," my aunt said firmly, her hand on my uncle's arm as if bracing for conflict. Nicholas's gaze found me across the room. "Grace, tell them I'm allowed to be here," he demanded, as if my word carried any authority over grief and decency. I straightened, my voice calm but icy. "What? You're serious right now? You told my dying grandmother to hurry up and die while I was out?" He blinked, startled. That's not... "Does it matter?" I cut him off. "You thought it was okay to use her final moments to manipulate me. That's what this is about." The room went silent. Even the neighbors, the cousins, the church friends, all eyes were on him. "I was trying to help," he stammered, the first crack in his composure. "You were trying to help her die faster so I'd come back to you. That's not help. That's cruelty," I said, louder now, letting the rage build into my words. My uncle stepped between us. "This is a private residence. You are not welcome here. Leave now." Nicholas looked around at the faces, all of them watching with disgust, and realized the room had turned against him. Slowly, he backed toward the door. "Out," my aunt said, sharper than before. "Now." He turned to me one last time. "We're going to talk about this. You don't get to just dismiss me." I closed the door in his face. Silence hung for a moment. Then my uncle's hand rested on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, though I wasn't. Not even close. But I had drawn a line. My grandmother had taught me the importance of standing firm, of protecting the ones you love, and that included myself. The reception went on. People came to me quietly, offering hugs, small words of reassurance. Her best friend pulled me aside, her voice breaking. "She would be so proud of you, Grace. So proud." Even in grief, a part of me felt vindicated. I had chosen loyalty over manipulation, love over convenience, and though the weight of loss was immense, the betrayal I had narrowly escaped was now clear. But even as I tried to breathe, I knew this wasn't over. Nicholas wouldn't vanish quietly. The storm he had begun was far from finished. After the funeral, I thought the confrontation had settled things. I was wrong. The phone started buzzing immediately afterward. Calls, texts, voicemails. Nicholas, his friends, his family, all trying to convince me that I had misjudged him, that he didn't mean it that way, that I was overreacting. Some messages were apologetic, almost desperate. "I didn't mean it like that. Please, Grace, just hear me out." Others were angry. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. How could you do this?" And some were wild, almost delusional. "I can't believe you kicked me out. You have no right." I didn't respond. Days later, I returned to my apartment for the first time since moving back. The place was in chaos. Takeout containers littered the counter, clothes on the bed, half-empty shampoo bottles in the shower. Nicholas had been living there without paying rent, using my absence as permission to take over the space that had always been mine. I boxed up everything that belonged to him: clothes, makeup, books, personal items, piled them by the door. Then I called a locksmith. That night, the locks were changed. One text: "Your stuff is boxed by the door. One day to pick it up. Your key doesn't work anymore. Do not contact me." The response was instant. "Are you kidding me? You can't just kick me out. This is my home too." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Within hours, the harassment escalated. Unknown numbers, friends calling on his behalf, even his mother showing up at my grandmother's house, each one trying the same manipulation. She didn't mean it. She just felt neglected. You're throwing away 2 years over one mistake. 2 weeks in, I realized words weren't enough. Legal action was the only way to protect myself. I went to the courthouse, filing for a restraining order. I documented everything: screenshots of texts, photos of boxes outside my apartment, records of unwanted visits, voicemails, emails, every number he used to harass me. The temporary order was granted immediately. The hearing was scheduled for a few weeks later. I didn't need to hear his excuses anymore. The judge didn't need to be swayed by manipulation. The law was clear. He had crossed every boundary. When the day of the hearing came, Nicholas appeared with no lawyer, his mother in tow trying to plead his case to justify the indefensible. She claimed he was just trying to help, that the situation was taken out of context. The judge asked, "Did you tell a dying woman that she should let go because she was wasting Grace's life?" Nicholas faltered. It wasn't like that. Context? What context? The judge pressed. I thought I was helping her. She was suffering. You thought telling a dying woman she was a burden would help? The voice was ice cold, unyielding. The evidence was undeniable. Texts, photos, voicemails, repeated attempts to contact and manipulate Grace and her family, all in black and white. The restraining order was granted. 1 year, no contact, 500 feet away from me, my workplace, my grandmother's home, and all family members. Nicholas cried. His mother protested. But it was too late. The boundaries had been set, and justice, though not perfect, had been served. Afterwards, I sat in the quiet of my grandmother's house. Her will had left me everything. The house, her savings, the comfort of knowing she trusted me with her legacy. Slowly, I began to go through her things, discovering letters she had written to my parents over the years. Letters never sent, yet full of love, wisdom, and guidance. I cried for the first time since her passing, for the loss, for the betrayal narrowly avoided, for the strength my grandmother had passed to me. I realized that in the middle of grief, of chaos, of confrontation, I had survived, not broken by love, but fortified by it. Nicholas's presence was gone, his chaos nullified by law, by boundaries, by the unwavering support of those who had truly loved me. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. Days passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. The house felt emptier without my grandmother, yet fuller than it had ever been. Her presence lingered in the worn furniture, the faint scent of her perfume in the closets, the way the morning light spilled across the kitchen counter just as she liked it. Nicholas was gone. The restraining order ensured that, legally and physically. The harassment had ceased, but the emotional residue, the anger, the shock, the betrayal, took longer to process. I spent my mornings sorting through her belongings, letters, photographs, and journals. Each item was a fragment of her life, a window into her love for me and my parents. One letter caught my eye, written just after she had been diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. "I'm not scared of dying, Grace. I'm scared of leaving you alone. But you've grown into someone strong, someone capable. You will be okay without me. I trust you, and I love you." I clutched it to my chest, tears streaming freely. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully grieve, to let the weight of loss descend and then lift. The house became my sanctuary. Her recipes, her trinkets, her careful organization, it was comforting. I could feel her presence guiding me, reminding me of the strength she had instilled. I was no longer just surviving. I was learning to live in the quiet aftermath. Her wisdom echoed in my mind. Loyalty, love, and moral clarity are worth more than convenience or comfort. Nicholas's betrayal had been a cruel revelation, but it had also been a lesson to recognize those who see love as an obstacle rather than a treasure. Even now, I catch myself reaching for my phone, expecting to call her, only to remember she's gone. Some days are heavier than others. Some mornings I wake with a dull ache of longing, but other days there is relief. The knowledge that I had seen Nicholas for who he truly was before he could cause even more damage. I began leaving letters, photographs, and small mementos in a box by the window. A ritual of remembrance, of connection, a tangible thread to her memory. My aunt stopped by occasionally, helping me sort things, sharing stories, laughing softly about the quirks only we had known. The house, the letters, the quiet mornings, these became my new rhythm. I wasn't alone. I had inherited more than material possessions. I had inherited courage, integrity, and the ability to discern genuine love from manipulation. And though Nicholas's shadow lingered in memory, it no longer dictated my emotions. He was a lesson, not a chain. I could grieve, reflect, and move forward without fear or compromise. Her final gift was clear. She saved me one last time, not by shielding me from loss, but by showing me the kind of people worth my love and those unworthy of my trust. She gave me the strength to stand firm, to protect myself, and to honor her legacy. For now, I live day by day, enveloped in her love, surrounded by her memories. The grief softens, replaced gradually by clarity, resilience, and an understanding of who I am without compromise. Her life, her love, and her unwavering presence remain with me. And for that, I am endlessly grateful.